This is episode 695 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing.
And I'm Wally Drangmeister.
I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. Wally, some disturbing news to start off with relating to the Republican Party headquarters being apparently torched in some kind of arson uh, act that happened. I believe it was over the weekend, like Sunday night or Saturday night, one of those two nights. And yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, Sunday morning, the Republican Party headquarters appear to have been the attempted to be set on fire. There was a spray painted ICE equals KKK graffiti on the building, and of course, investigations still ongoing. No real information in terms of what happened, but a very disturbing incident for sure.
Yeah, Paul, it is disturbing. Political violence, and I think, depending on your definition, that would probably rise to the level of terrorism using property as the initial target. It is concerning, and it is. It's interesting that they chose the New Mexico the New Mexico Republican Party, potentially one of the organizations that has way less to do about that than many others with regard to what's going on in New Mexico or in Washington. But a very disturbing thing that happened, and against the context of a lot of other political violence with Tesla dealerships, Tesla cars, other things. That's getting a little wild out there.
Yeah, and it's not unexpected. I mean, quite frankly, government, in my estimation, plays. Live in an interesting sphere because my world, from a professional standpoint, is government, but I am of the firm opinion that government should play a much lower, smaller, reduced role in our lives. That there are certain, in the case of the U.S. federal government, constitutional principles that they should adhere to, and that should be very limited. State level as well. I think there's a lot that states can and should do relative to the federal government, but also should be much more limited in a lot of other respects. But uh, I think one of the reasons that we've seen this kind of upsurge, and I'm old enough to remember the 90s, Wally, I know you are as well.
Paul, I'm old enough to remember the 60s when things were getting crazy down on Central. So,
right. Well, but
yeah, I mean, in terms of political,
the 90s were a lull. Like even
yeah.
even the 80s, to an extent, were a lull in terms of, and things come and go when it comes to heated passions and politics. Certainly, the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of fire bombings all across the country. The Weather Underground, the Vietnam War. There was a lot of things that people were very exercised and upset about. And then the Vietnam War ended in the mid 70s, and things took a while to cool down. And the 80s, and of course, once the economy really hit its stride in the 80s, political violence started to really decline, and the 90s were, at least in my lifetime, a bit of a golden era. And then I think that it's safe to say came to an end in a certain respect with the 9/11 attacks. Obviously, there was a lot of rhetoric and heated debate over the 2000 presidential election, but wherever you mark that turning point, we've entered and been in a period for the last 25 years, I think, of a lot more angst and an activist government from both sides of the aisle. And just that is the kind of thing that, as I see it, tends to push the passions into a higher and higher stratosphere. And we're definitely at a very high point right now. in modern American history when it comes to the political rhetoric. And until government takes a back seat and shrinks and becomes less of a factor in everybody's day-to-day lives, and what is Donald Trump saying becomes less of a uh, front front page headline important news. I think I don't see any kind of off ramp.
No, and the other thing is, and maybe this was always the case, and we just didn't know it, but it also seems like there are between social media and a lot of money. There's a highly coordinated degree of uprising that now happens across the country, and again, I think that maybe always was the case, and we just didn't realize it. But it's easy to know now that first they announce it on social media, but even when they don't, a lot of things happen in a lot of different places, the same sort of protest at the exact same time. And so, yeah, how much of that is tapping into, uh, the frustration, and it's easy to get people versus are they paid versus, are there outside actors that are using this for their own political benefits? These are all very good questions, but no one would disagree. I don't think that, in the last 20 years, things have definitely become more heated politically in terms of what happens, quote, out on the streets of the United States.
Yeah, and well, I hope things do stop in terms of the heated political rhetoric. I hope we can at least agree to try to solve some of the problems in our state and obviously Washington, D.C. as well. But we'll move on. Now, more typically, we talk about all of the wonderful things that our governor and legislature are doing to solve all of the problems of New Mexico and how we're number one in all the good lists and number 50 on all the bad lists. I know that may seem sarcastic, but that was my feeble attempt at an April Fool's joke. That's the best I can do, Wally, because
Yeah.
it's not reality. It's nowhere close to reality. And anybody who listens to this knows that uh, we're doing the exact opposite of what should be done in the state of New Mexico. So we have a couple of Wallethub reports. One of them, the states with the best and worst return on investment from the tax dollars that they spend. Uh, I know it is absolutely shocking to you, Wally, that we are dead last in return on investment.
And Paul, I don't know. Not only is it not shocking, it's wow, to be absolutely last. That's the part that gets me. Okay, it's like, well, if we were 46th, 47th, it's like, well, we're at the bottom, but somebody else, another state is doing worse on whatever analytic they use, whatever small study they put together. But no, we're there at the absolute very bottom. And
It takes skill. It really
yeah,
does.
uh, maybe the Washington Generals could come and do
Ooh,
a how to succeed in life workshop for the state of New Mexico for our elected officials, because yeah, losing being last that consistently, that is not easy to do. And I do think what we have now is we have a series of overlapping issues that impact each other, and we talk about a lot of them, but it's crime, education, tax policy, business climate. Now we're adding in there our new one is access to healthcare, and all of those things work to impact whatever view you take of New Mexico.
yeah. So, few data points here from the report. The best states tend to be lower tax burden states. New Hampshire's at the very, very top. Florida number two. South Dakota number three. Those are all low tax states, and all of them lack a personal income tax, although New Hampshire lacks both a income tax and a sales tax, which reinforces my general view that it's better to have low taxes and mediocre government than to have high taxes and mediocre government, because government is always going to kind of be mediocre to poor. In New Mexico, we happen to have poor government. We have very, very ineffective government. And having the tax burden that we do, it is going to propel us into a lot of negative territories when it comes to these kinds of return on investment. So uh, they put a little chart up: 50th on overall ROI for New Mexico, 49th on education, 42nd on health, 50th in safety, 45th in the economy, and we really jump up to 34th on infrastructure and pollution. So it's just it, there's no way to justify New Mexico government as doing a good job on a variety of these issues. And we know that these are critical issues that time and time again, especially on education, safety, and the economy, the those issues never change. It's almost study after study after study. We're always towards the very, very bottom in those areas. And any that's the bread and butter of state government.
Yes, and Paul, as you were saying, I think that in some ways having a lot of money in your state is probably negatively correlated for state governments to do a good job, because once they have a lot of money, they take on these crazy things that they can't do, and they lose focus on the meat and potatoes. And so what are some meat and potatoes? It's the things we always talk about. But in the meantime, we have I don't know what it is in New Mexico, and I won't even call it woke because I'm not sure that's what it is we just get distracted. How many times did you hear a debate in Santa Fe this last session where they talked about how are we going to improve educational attainment in the state of New Mexico? Is there anything we can do legislatively? Wasn't discussed, just plain old wasn't discussed. They talked about maybe we'll do a little tax break here and there, but with all this money, the ability to restructure our taxes such that we would be a better place for people to work and live. No discussion. A little bit of discussion about healthcare, but the trial lawyers put a quick kibosh on that. So what do? Is they just go around in circles, barely get a budget out, and you know, don't do a lot more. Oh yeah, but then let's do a paid family medical leave. That's what New Mexico needs. It's like, maybe at some level, once you have a lot of success economically as a state, something like that wouldn't be as damaging. But right now we've got to learn to crawl and walk and run before we do some of these crazy things. But that's what we spend a lot of time, money, and effort on in Santa Fe, and the most scarce resource, which is focus on policy.
Yeah, it's something particular about New Mexico that we don't hold these politicians accountable. And whether it's a red state or a blue state, whatever the governing philosophy is, uh, you would think enough failure would be uh, something to get that political party or political class de-elected. In New Mexico, there is a flaw in the system. For all I can say, there are some number of people. I don't know exactly what percentage, but they've always been enough to uh, cause the elections to tilt in one particular direction. And just as a matter of course, you would expect that there would be some balance in this electoral process in New Mexico, given the constant refrain of failure in the state of New Mexico. But so far, and getting on 100 years, that has not been the case. But moving on to a second Wallethub report, and I wonder, it's got to be rare that Wallethub releases two reports in the span of about a week, and one state is the worst in both reports. I wonder, there's got to be some kind of Wallethub data tracker, AI. Maybe we can use some AI to figure this out. But the second report is on March 24th of this year here, so very recently, and it shows that New Mexico is actually, these are reports from March 24th and 25th. I
Yeah.
wanted to see the dates. So the ROI report's March 25th. The stressed report is the 24th. And yes, your humble land of enchantment, once again, the very, very most stressed state in the entire country. Now, intuitively, I think it makes sense that government not solving problems makes life more stressful. That is inevitable. But here are the ways that they look at stress: work-related stress, money-related stress, family-related stress, health and safety-related stress. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it, right? Work, money, i.e., job. Well, money could be your wife or lack of wife or girlfriend or baby mama. I don't know. We won't go into all that, but we know that money can be very stressful. Family also related, in health. Anyway, we're number one, as in worst. Nevada, Louisiana, West Virginia, Mississippi. So some relatively low socioeconomic states, with Nevada, which of course has a lot of divorces and a lot of challenges on that social family related issue. But
You know, Paul, when you get married at 3 in the morning by a guy who looks like Elvis, you
oh,
know, it doesn't always set you up for a long-term relationship.
you
So,
you and Carol are doing so well, though. No, just kidding. um,
but and yet the exception makes the rule. No, that just kidding.
just kidding, Carol. Then Nebraska, Minnesota, New Hampshire, oh, South Dakota. Oh, heard that one before. Two of those states among the very lowest tax states. Maybe having more money in your pocket and a stronger economy is a way to alleviate stress in your life. I know this is shocking stuff. Well, there's a lot of variables here, and I won't go into the bloody details. I'm going to simply read what Wallethub had to say. New Mexico is the most stressed state, in large part because it has the highest violent crime rate per capita and property crime rate per capita. That is obviously very, very true. These types of threats cause residents to worry about their safety. Residents of New Mexico also have the highest separation and divorce rate in the country, which is shocking and maybe has an influence on that crime rate issue. The third highest share of households that have a single parent. These conditions put excess stress on children and parents alike. You won't see any of the lefty groups out there talking about the importance of marriage and family units, though. I promise you that is way, way down their list. Not that that's not our bailiwick either per se, but certainly it's something we're willing to talk about and discuss the importance of. The question is, how do you actually get that done? There's some policies that could change, but then we move on. Financial conditions in New Mexico also contribute to people's stress levels. New Mexico has the third highest poverty rate in the country, and residents have one of the lowest median credit scores at 697. Low incomes and low credit scores make it difficult for residents to get credit, purchase homes and vehicles, and otherwise improve their economic status. Well,
It's a little depressing.
yeah, it is, and that's just the way it is.
Now, you use this example on one point. To be clear, these Wallethub reports typically don't provide a lot of suggestions or policy recommendations or whatever.
Right.
Though the Rio Grande Foundation does, but the point of it is that you know, this is one of those, like, you go into the ER and they take your temperature and it's 106 degrees. It's like, okay, we have something that probably needs to be addressed. Well, New Mexico, we get a lot of these reports, and we either discount them, say they don't apply here, ignore them, whatever. and just go about our business. So, it's one of those things, 50th again.
Yeah, and if I was going to take a stab, and I realize that family formation and those kinds of things are not easy to solve directly. I'm going to go with the indirect approach. I'm
Yeah.
going to say that, well, if we had a stronger education system and a more educated populace, that there would be more eligible people, quality people on both sides of the gender aisle to form a partnership with. If you had more financial stability, there would be less arguments, less potential issues in those relationships for people to get divorced from. Of course, on the flip side, lack of marriage, single parent families by themselves create economic stress. But having more plentiful jobs and plentiful opportunities, thanks to higher education outcomes and a more diversified economy, would I think on net help that situation and would solve it in a lot of important ways. Plus, this is the thing that kind of has come to my attention is that New Mexico has, there's the old saying, it's the land of entrapment, right?
Yes.
New Mexico policies make it the land of entrapment because there are a lot of people who do want to be here and are willingly here, but there are a lot of people who are here because they don't have any other options and simply can't leave. But what we need to do is to bring in people who are successful, are having big ideas and high education levels and economic power, and these could be doctors, they could be inventors, they could be business people, but we tend to through our policies chase those people out. So we need new blood in New Mexico. We need those folks to kind of help improve a lot of these factors in our state. So it's not just about improving life for the people that are here, it's about making New Mexico attractive for people who aren't here, who can help kind of insert some of this new blood and new dynamism in our state.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. And, one of the issues we have is we put a lot of money into education in our state, particularly higher education in this example. But our retention rate of our college graduates is very low. Most of them, we spend a lot of money, and the ones that do well academically tend to move to places like Colorado, Texas, Arizona, and so forth, and we don't keep them here. And so, yeah, we do need to be a better place. And if you're playing the is Wally going to talk about gross receipts tax? Yes, he is. Once again, Paul, I'm involved with two companies right now that are startups that are starting to get some traction. And both of them were started in New Mexico and developed in New Mexico. And now they're getting to the point where things are about to get real. And because of a lot of things that are going on in New Mexico, both of those companies are looking at where else they can move to that doesn't have an income tax, that doesn't tax services with a gross receipts tax, et cetera. And so, again, that's always the me part of it is I feel like I am the gross receipts spokesman of the state, but there are a lot of other things like that. So if you look at it from the point of view of somebody that does work for a business, maybe whether it's in the government or quasi government like the lab or another business, to come to New Mexico, you're going to want to see the streets safe, a place to get your children educated, and you probably want a good tax structure. Those are things that are well within the policy purview of the legislature to make some serious progress on, and yet we're not. And so until those core items are addressed, everything else I think is going to be window dressing when you talk about economic development or anything like that. Oh, with the exception of the film industry, which if you give somebody enough money, they'll blur their eyes and overlook that. But again, they don't move here, they just do projects here.
All right. Well, now that we've thoroughly gone through that, and I think that was excellent because a lot of these things they're so systemic. It's easy to talk about the data points and the reports, but kind of digging into them a little bit is where we get the added value. I'll run through some of the bills that we're glad are dead. We did last week the in the legislature the worst things that passed. Here are the bills that we're glad were dead that are dead in terms of bills that really I think had some momentum. We're not just talking about any crazy idea that got introduced. Certainly, we don't like those crazy ideas, but we're happy that several of these bills got killed. HB 11, of course, paid family leave. SB 4, that's net zero. That didn't get a lot of momentum, thankfully, in the legislative session, but uh, net zero was endorsed specifically, called out by the governor in her State of the State address. And I think I'm not going to be speaking out of turn here, but Wally, I would say that if adopted, SB4 net zero would be far more harmful than HB 11 paid family leave in either iteration. While harmful, net zero would destroy the state's economy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you're serious about net zero and all of its ramifications, what that really means and what that would take is well, those around us don't have a would not have a such a bill. Yeah, I agree. And again, like a lot of things, you could pass that, Paul. And on day one, week one, month one, maybe even year one, you wouldn't notice a lot of difference. But it would be like a combination of a world war or rent control with regard to what it would do, what it would potentially do to the economy in New Mexico. And yeah, it's those are good to call out. And boy, if we get woke points for calling them out, so be it. But man, I'm glad did they that one didn't pass.
Yeah. So a few other bills, SB 85, that's the one that would have limited RGF and other nonprofits' ability to engage in various political activities under the First Amendment. It passed the Senate unanimously and was killed when RGF and its allies got some lefty groups to engage and to ultimately kill it in the House. So it died a quick death without even a floor vote in the House, but was a really terrible vote in the Senate. HB 318 attempted to bankrupt gun stores by opening up to a bunch of frivolous litigation. That could, of course, be applied to other industries. So that one is a huge bill that thankfully is dead. HB 548 would have imposed new taxes unnecessarily on oil and gas in New Mexico. It became part of the tax bill, HB 14, which did pass, but minus the oil tax increase. HB 339 would have created new regulations relating to rents and home buying against supposed discrimination in public accommodation and housing. The way to solve the housing crisis is to build more housing, not to get government even more involved than it already is. SB 20 would have increased taxes on e cigarettes, nicotine pouches, and other nicotine delivery systems by 40%. Those happen to actually be healthier alternatives to smoking cigarettes, which would not have been raised. Now, we don't support raising taxes on cigarettes and cigars either, but SB 20 would have been a particularly problematic piece of legislation. So, those are some of the worst bills that failed. And, we're happy they failed. We are frustrated that these idiotic ideas keep coming back time and time again. But the alternative, well, there's two alternatives. One is to actually solve the problems facing New Mexico. The other is that they pass, and we don't like that one at all. So it's you know good to see bad bills die.
No doubt it's good to see bad bills die, but I do want to point out the fact that bad bills, even those that are killed, can sometimes do damage.
Oh, absolutely.
And the reason is that if you're looking at coming to New Mexico and setting up shop here and investing millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, you want to know what the political climate is, and you absolutely focus on what it is today, what's the regulatory framework, what are taxes, but then you definitely do look at the legislature for what might be coming down the pipe. And as we've said, some of these things they consider and that get some traction are really frightening, and that definitely gets put into the Excel spreadsheet as a check in the negative column.
Absolutely. Yeah, the businesses just look at some of these bills and their genesis and they're like, okay, that's not something that we want to
We
see
do not want to
happen.
be a
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah. It's businesses capital is mobile, especially when they're looking at a state to do business in. And if they see, you know, I hate to throw out, it's been a while since I've been in the dating pool, but you go on a date with somebody, and I know you're a ways from this as well, but they have one habit that seems a little concerning, and that that can, and vice versa. It doesn't matter who it is, the guy, the girl, whatever. Uh, eh, that one little annoying thing can actually drive the entire relationship into a ditch, and it's the same way with the business.
Yes, and New Mexico does not start out in this hypothetical dating relationship as being considered an 8, 9, or 10 on the
We're
attractiveness
not.
scales. So we really need to watch our P's and Q's during that process. So.
Yeah, we won't go take that metaphor too far. We'll just leave it.
Because no one's going to be
That would.
happy with what we say, including
How
us.
many teeth do we have, Wally? All right. Speaking of missing teeth and New Mexico, and we've talked extensively about the NAEP and the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Unfortunately, last week saw the release of New Mexico's Vistas report card, a yearly report that examines academic outcomes and graduation rates. Uh, they focus on APS. All of the information is available online. I quite frankly didn't have the opportunity to go through all of it. We already know that the NAEP is really harsh on New Mexico. We're dead last in all four categories. But so we're going to look at APS, Albuquerque Public Schools specifically. They're the largest district in the state, and the data are very troubling with regard to that district. 2.9% decrease in graduation, 2.2% decline in math scores, a 1% drop in reading proficiency, and a 13% drop in regular attendance. It says the largest district in the state, ranked last in the country by everybody, but this case, U.S. News for Education, lagged behind New Mexico averages in most metrics. And there is a lot of focus on the attendance issue. According to the report card, it says 66% of New Mexico students attended school 90% of the time or more, compared with 50% of APS students. So, what I'm reading from that is only 66% of New Mexico students attended school, on what you would call a regular basis consistently. And that number declines to 50% of APS students. Gee, Wally, what recent events in New Mexico and decision by the governor might have negatively impacted the willingness and desire of children to attend school in our wonderful state?
Well, we did have a little COVID, and we dealt with that very, very poorly. We
Yep.
came back very, very late, and humans are funny. We get used to doing things, and there was a lot of guess what? Our our public education students are humans, and a lot of them got used to not going to school, and are it's really hard to get them back in there. And Paul, 90% attendance, that's missing 18 days,
Yeah,
180-day school year. So
90% is barely
yeah,
getting.
that's not. Paul. When I was growing up, there were a couple of years. Paul, I had the Hong Kong flu, I believe, twice, so I missed some school.
That's racist, Wally.
No, that's what it was.
I'm
That's what
kidding.
it's called. But so I missed some school, but I think I missed school. But if that's the good point, I'd like to see the distribution of those that are missing more than 10%.
Yeah,
But the fact that only half of APS students are meeting that's pretty profound.
that is rough. Yeah,
And here's the thing, Paul. What if you had the best school in the world and the best teachers teaching and the best curriculum and the most effective program, and nobody came? What would happen? And we know we probably don't have all those precursors to it, but the key is that if you're an average public school student, your education is kind of correlated to whether you go to school or not. So
yeah, and rarely do I rely on my mother for public policy advice, but she actually is of the opinion that the police need to do more on the truancy situation, and I don't disagree with her. I just don't think, in this modern era, it's not that you just see 10 and 12 and 13-year-olds sitting on the stoop or out on the streets. They're all probably inside just playing video games. So that gets a lot trickier when you're talking about how to enforce that. Obviously, you can send police to people's houses and encourage them or demand that they send their kids to school, and that's just a big burden on the overstretched police in this city, in this state. But I wanted to give you a real quick quote before we conclude the conversation here. So this is from Albuquerque Teacher Federation President Ellen Bernstein. Ever since the pandemic, our whole culture thinks school is optional because, obviously and controversial, we sent the kids home. Now, I don't believe at the time Ellen Bernstein believed this was very controversial. I don't remember, and I would love to be proven wrong here, that Bernstein and others in the unions were demanding our children be back in the school buildings. I seem to remember pretty much every union in the country, starting with Randy Weingarten, Chicago Teachers Union, and numerous other national and very big unions, very happily having the kids at home while teachers engaged in Zoom, quote unquote, teaching. But uh, it's just amazing, and I'm sorry to say it, but the media do not call them out on this at all. I mean, someone who's been around for 5 years should freaking understand this and ask that question and include that in the story. Or a quote from the governor: "Hey, do you think you screwed up there, MLG?"
well, and Paul, as a reporter, I would have asked, if you held that position, and let me just give her the benefit of the doubt, let me just say that she did you ever say anything to anyone publicly? Did you do a tweet? Did you have a discussion? Or is this just looking back and saying, well, now that it turned out poorly, I obviously was against what happened? And that's sort of what it's seeming like at this point. Although, uh, as you say, prove us wrong. Show us that you advocated for going back earlier, and we will definitely promote that.
Absolutely. I would love nothing more. I'm sure Ellen Bernstein is a listener to the show, and we'll just leave it there.
Long time listener, first time caller.
There you go. A YouTube, you could call him journalist or travel blogger, journalist. He makes YouTube videos of his travels across largely the United States, but I think also the world. His name's Nick Johnson. He did a 53-minute and 39 seconds, we'll call it the Tour de Warzone.
Yes.
The title of the video is "Inside New Mexico's Warzone, the most frightful neighborhood in America." Needless to say, this has been making the rounds on the social media. For those of you who don't know, the Warzone is now Albuquerque's so-called international district. Some of our most esteemed political leadership, including the mayor of Albuquerque, Tim Keller, used to represent in the state legislature the international slash war zone district. I believe Mimi Stewart and some others. I don't remember who exactly represents this area, but it's really not important because this is it's probably the most troubled single area in the entire state of New Mexico. It is a it is loosely, I would say, central between the university or Nob Hill, depending, certainly
Yeah.
starts by San Mateo and goes all the way to Eubank. And then it's a few blocks off of Central as well. And this guy just drives around. A lot of it's at night. It is drug use, it is trash, it is people camping. It is gross. And, Wally, I do happen to drive this area often uh, to come to the particular location of our show. And granted, that is in the morning or daytime when activity is at an ebb in the war zone. I quite frankly would not do a drive through these areas at 10, 11 o'clock at night. This is uh, pretty frightening, scary stuff, even for somebody who feels like, well, I've seen it all. I can handle it. This gentleman does go to those areas, and he is obviously kind of shocked by what he sees.
And Paul, I've seen some comments that said that implied that he just looked for the worst and he made it look worse than it was. That's what it looks like, Paul. I have to go by there, or sometimes must go by there, the closest distance between 2 points, and you see things. And I try not to be there at night, but if you see it kind of late in the evening, and I could imagine being there many times at night, it would just be totally frightening. That's what it's like. That was not like one of these protests that I've seen from time to time. I used to work right next to the Mexican consulate, and there would be protests at the Mexican consulate. And as soon as the TV cameras left, it was back to normal. It was just a fake protest. That happens whether we're watching it or not, because I go through there all the time. They move them around, but you see things when you go through there that you just do not want to see, and you definitely need to be careful. Zuni people will run out in front of traffic.
Yeah.
It is frightening, frightening, frightening. And if you don't like the way that looks, maybe take some steps to address that. But I don't think in any way, shape, or form that this was should be considered a hit piece by by the person who did this.
No, I totally agree with you. Uh, One final story that we're just going to gloss over and maybe get into a little more detail next week. Santa Fe, New Mexican reporting New Mexico movie industry looks to weather international slowdown in filmmaking. They cite the money going out the door. They cite the films being filmed here. Uh, it's not a surprise to me, given the COVID lockdowns and sudden boom in streaming, that we're in a bit of a lull here. Obviously, some people say, oh, well, this is bad for New Mexico's economy. I say, well, look at all the money we're saving by not handing the film industry big checks. But the reality is that even though they're reporting on this lull, we are still sending big checks to Hollywood. In fact, the New Mexican reports the state expects to pay out 118 million in the current fiscal year, while they spent 117 million last year and 73 million the year before that. Of course, those credits have become more generous, and and the idea is that they want to keep those checks flowing. But people aren't filming as much for a variety of reasons, and you know I think the thing that would be really interesting, and it might be a little hard to find this information, but since we're in a lull in the film industry, are these people going on unemployment and government benefits, and how much is that costing us here in New Mexico? I think that is the true question that needs to be asked. So, not sure there's an easy answer for that.
No, there's not. And then that industry is a very project oriented industry that the number of New Mexicans working on any given production could be really, really, really high or really low, depending on which it is. So,
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path Remarketing for producing this show.